John, whom she could not forget 6 months later. A bright smile lit up on John's face. His world was painted in even brighter colors due to the meeting of the long-awaited person, his loved one. Her most beautiful lilac eyes, like the same lilac that blooms in early summer, in the midst of the summer heat and sun rays. John claims that he heard every word she said, every rustle she made. He sweetly wiped the blood from her cheeks, thereby showing trust in himself and his own as well. He couldn't control himself then, which is why he didn't react to the words as he should. The heroine's eyes were covered with tiny diamonds that flowed down the beauty's tender cheeks, but these were just tears of happiness. The beauty extends her warm, gentle hand to her John's face. The girl still cannot believe that this is her John, that he is standing in front of her and rejoices at her appearance in the same way as she does. She hugged our hero tightly, showing her affection, care, and love. She clearly believed that it was him. Our hero's beloved cries like a child and cannot stop because she dreamed of finally seeing him. Like Beauty and the Beast, they are complete opposites, which is why they harmonize, making them the most unbreakable couple. John doesn't blame her for anything, showing his love for her by forgiving her everything. He pressed her tightly against his massive shoulder and used it to collect all her tears that she had been accumulating inside herself for so long. Tim is already starting to get to his feet, which means he must do something bad for them. He calls John's life hard and stinking, although he does all the most vile things. Tim grabs his wooden crossbow and prepares arrows for the back attack that is in his repertoire. John, Clint, and the beauty stand together and nothing foreshadows trouble. Tim sees that he has a great moment to attack them and settle everything with John to the end. He gathered all his malice and anger into his fist. His gaze is charged with golden energy, and he is ready to kill. The arrow has already been fired from Tim's crossbow, and it is unknown what John will do about such a move. Clint notices the attack from behind and warns everyone about it so that everyone can escape. John spectacularly catches an arrow in flight that was capable of piercing everyone in one shot. John is so strong that he is able to stop an arrow in mid-flight, even despite its flight. Tim is shocked by what he sees and has no choice but to run headlong. John points out that it's been a while since he and Tim have seen each other, and he's missing a couple of life lessons. After the moment when he sent our hero to be devoured by monsters, John decides to return the arrow back to him, as if it returned like a boomerang without reaching its target. One strong swing and the arrow flies stronger and faster than from a crossbow. The arrow pierced Tim in the left chest, which he could not have expected. The arrow attacks like a cannonball and also drives him into the wall with its force. The dead crawl out of the clouds of dust and want to attack our hero again as quickly as possible and eat everyone in this village. Tim's hand is dripping with blood and he can do nothing but hang on the wall. Everyone remained silent, and Clint smirked at his opponent, embodying his dignity. Tim is nailed to the wall like a nail on a hanger. This is exactly what he deserves most, to bleed. He still doesn't understand what's going on here, where John gets such power from and what he should do. The situation is very bad for him, and he has no choice but to hang in there and hope for all the good. He clenched his teeth tightly, as if they would crumble into dust any minute. The boss screams like a real madman, whether he is trying to beg everyone to pity him. The beauty is worried about Tim's behavior, as if she is haunted by the life she lived for 6 months. The little sister runs up to her brother to express all her worries for them, for everyone who saved and protected all this time. John is full of shock, but hugs his little sister, and she talks about all the experiences that visited her head during a couple of hours of separation. John brought something for his beloved sister, and it is unclear what kind of surprise awaits her. She thought that John had brought her the meat of the dead and was amazed at how Tim, a cruel tyrant and not a ruler, raised children here. John was shocked by what his little sister said, how you could do this to a child and why. The girl is a real smart girl, because even when Tim forced him to eat zombie meat, she always refused him, saying that she was not hungry. She had to keep the stinking meat of a dead man in her mouth so that she would not be scolded by the cruel Tim. John is still in shock from the news that the little girl tells him, who is also his younger sister, who should never see such things in her life. Even a small trifle from the old days saved the life of a smart little sister. But this is a dirty trick on the mother, but salvation in a different situation. He was visited by warm memories from a carefree childhood where they did not have to run from a crowd of dead people. My little sister saw her parents who had already turned into zombies, and to see them like this is a real horror for a small child. Her face of joy was filled with sadness. She would never be able to see them again, feel the warmth of their tender skin, hear the fragrant smell of their perfume, and hear the pleasant voice of her father and mother. This will bring tears to the eyes of even the strongest soul, who can chop stones with his willpower, but will cry because of the death of his relatives. The girl could not eat zombie meat not because of her own motives, but because the dead could be someone's parents. John remained silent once again, realizing that his little sister had experienced too much during her years and it was scary. The beauty shed tears after the girl's words, as they were truly sincere. She realizes that Tim deceived her again because he promised that he would not harm the girl. Her determination was gigantic. She was ready to grind him into powder so that he could never do any mischief again. Tim plays the role of a villain perfectly, and his charisma is amazing because even in a dire situation, he continues to smile evilly and laugh like a villain. He considers his beloved strange, since she trusted him, the one who in life will not follow anyone's lead. The mad ruler raises his hand, trembling, and tries to do something. He cannot believe that he loved her, and even shed a tear, like a little child. Putting his hand to his face, Tim is clearly thinking about how much he hates himself for allowing anyone to get close to him. John looks completely blankly in Tim's direction, understanding the reason for his tears. His willpower is amazing. Clint easily rips the arrow out of his body and does not show a drop of mercy towards him. Clint claims that the one who destroyed the family hearth does not dare to live and will not allow him to do this to anyone again. He is already preparing a bloody arrowhead to send Tim to another world once and for all. In Tim's eyes, there is no longer that hefty confidence and only fear is written in them. The fear that he caused to all the people around him has returned to him. Something shocked even our Clint, who is cold-bloodedly ready to kill his own father. Tim's brother stopped the arrowhead, taking the blow himself, thereby saving his cruel brother. Tim is shocked by his brother's suddenness, but he is amazed by the devotion to him that Tim may have cultivated for himself. The brother sends Tim to hell so that he can escape unharmed. Will is already at the limit and is already begging his brother to run and not stand in a stupor, exposing his life to danger, which is already assessed by the life of his brother. The whole gang calls Clint an insatiable bastard and tries to humiliate him in every possible way. Clint mocks everyone, as if he spits in everyone's mouth and forces them to swallow it all. He has increased pressure on Will and intends to kill him and Tim along with him. Will screams in fear for his life, since he won't be able to hold the arrow in his hands for long. Now he continues to throw mud at Clint so that the crowd turns on him and crushes him with numbers. Will calls Clint's father and asks if he wants to help him. Tim, silently, sits on the sidelines and waits for the events to end, while everyone else asks Clint's father to send him to the next world and not give him the label of a murderer. The old man asks Clint to stop, but at the same time he shakes with fear like a child. Clint continues to mock everyone and wants to kill all his enemies as quickly as possible. All beaten and broken, he continues to pretend to be an important person, but he is nothing of himself. He grabbed a pitchfork from one of the onlookers and rushed towards Clint. "All you have to do is kill him," thought the stupid father, and rushed to deliver a stabbing blow to his son. In the blink of an eye, John stops Clint's father's attack. Now the danger is finally over. He is very scared. His eyes exude only fear and despair. All the spark has gone out. John easily extinguished it. Taller, stronger, and most importantly smarter, John is stronger than his smaller brothers in every way, capable of thinking like a human and fighting like a zombie. The father stumbled and fell, as if any minute he would cry like a little girl. Warm, golden, and fetid water flowed from his father's pants, and this confirmed his fear and apprehension. He hid behind his wife, the lowest act on his part. This is a real reason to laugh, since even Clint was amused by such a scene and completely showed all the weaknesses of his father. Clint just can't stop laughing and continue fighting normally. He points a finger at him and points out that he defecated out of fear, and this could very well become the boss while he is running around somewhere. Will caught a good moment and is not going to waste it. He snatches the arrow from Clint's hands, and that's pretty bad since he can defend himself. Will points the bloody arrowhead in Clint's direction. Clint understands that such a fry won't even be able to cut up a dead chicken. Will is already spitting blood from just one blow from Clint, yet he is too weak for him and is not at all close to him. Will only manages to touch Clint's hand. Obviously, this is not casual and maybe even part of the plan. Clint holds the arrow in his hands and continues to taunt his opponent, calling him a dog with the wrong master. Brother Will falls to his feet in severe pain. Clint hit too hard. Incredibly, even now he does not lose his fighting spirit and says that Clint only needs to be bitten to defeat him. Clint's look suggests that he misunderstands his opponent, what he is talking about and what his thoughts are about. Finally, it dawned on him. His guesses were confirmed and the touch was not simple. Will attached an explosive to Clint's hand, and it would soon tear off his hand. Clint's gaze is filled with fear. Will smiles cheekily because he humiliated his enemy, which means he won. Clint was angry. He plunged an arrow right into Will's forehead and didn't even regret killing a man. The arrow sticks out from Will's forehead like a great blade that lay in the stone, and only the worthy could pull it out. Tim lost his spirit after the death of his brother, and it is very unusual for him to react this way to someone else's death. The smile on Will's face did not fade even after death. He is the winner in this battle. Streams of blood flow down onto his snow-white t-shirt. His entire body is a sign of battle, heaps of deep wounds and a bloody mess on his forehead. Tim still can't believe his brother's death. His body is numb, as if chained by a ship's anchor chains. Clint recognizes this little guy as a worthy warrior and even praises him, realizing that soon only ashes may remain from his hand and scatter to the wind. The fuse has already burned out. The stick of dynamite is a second away from exploding. The countdown has begun. Clint's team is worried about him and shouts his name at the top of their voices. It is unknown for what purpose and how it will help him. Even John was worried about his friend, comrade, and the one who could cover his back in a difficult situation. His right arm is torn into pieces. A massive explosion may leave his arm completely bloody or leave him permanently disabled. The explosion turned out to be very strong, as a flash from the explosion was visible even over the horizon. Even the dead, who were kilometers away, saw a strong explosion, and this could not lead to anything good. Ashes, blood, and smoke. All these are the results of an aimless battle, a battle to the death for your friends, family, and acquaintances. John and the whole team are shocked by what they saw. Everyone hopes that everything will be okay with Clint. Clint lies with a face full of despair, with a damaged arm, and it is unclear whether he will be able to continue to use it, whether everything will be as before. Tears are running down Clint's cheeks. Ash is swirling around him, and the abrasions on his face indicate that he is in great pain. Clint is incredibly angry. If Will were still alive, he would greatly regret the opportunity to live that fate gave him. No one knows how to help Clint, how to cure him, whether it is possible. He tosses and turns in pain, spinning in circles. He really hurts. Clint himself is to blame for his carelessness, as he underestimated his opponent and paid for it with his own hand, which will be a permanent lesson for him. For an unknown purpose, Clint grabs a nearby wooden stake with an iron grip. Will's cold corpse is getting colder and colder every second. Clint was as mad as a child, and he needed the stake to finish off the already dead body. He sticks a stake into Will. His blood spurts out like a fountain. How terrible Clint is when he's angry. John reassures Clint, like a real father restrains his son so that he does not finish off his offender. Clint is still a child. Everything in his character is similar to the traits of a child. He only talks about himself. If he were an adult, he did not reveal his anger and calmly reacted to the loss of his arm and did not put the whole team in danger. John also fell under the hot hand. His face suffers many blows, and this behavior does not please our John. John is very dissatisfied with the way Clint behaves and also considers his character childish. Clint claims that his skin should not have a scratch on it. It should be perfectly smooth and clean. John looked at Clint's hand, which was burned from the explosions and looked terrible, as if it had been fried over a fire until it was smoked. He asks Leo for help to find out if Clint's arm can continue to function normally. The scientist realized at one glance that in general, the hand was only burned on the outside and the bones were all in good condition. Every time you touch Clint, it hurts him a lot, causing him to scream. John is already tired of Clint constantly shedding tears without any specific meaning. Something made Leo turn his gaze to the side and even shocked him. The pupils narrowed greatly and became covered with fear. What could have frightened our scientists so much? Leo's surprise was facilitated by a new attack of the dead, who saw the explosion and followed it to the trail to the village. Leo warns everyone that a zombie is already on their heels. Clint is still crying into the chest of his protector, who is not very happy about the grief of his ally. John understands that he must initially calm his friend down, Otherwise, he will lose his mind under the influence of anger and die the death of madmen. John orders the team to take Clint to safety and protect him. Michael grabs the wounded man and decides to take him to a secluded place. John also calls his cute little sister. In addition, John is calling his beloved, and it is unknown why he called them. He puts his girls in his arms and is going to help carry everyone to a secluded place, since he does not dare to lose everyone again. One of the gang of dead meat-eaters grabs Tim, offering to help him. John, even after such dirty tricks on Tim's part, is ready to help him. John's kindness knows no bounds. But still, such kindness must be paid for and nothing else, since this is real alms on his part. Heaps of corpses lie on the ground, and their fetid smell develops in a light breeze and spreads this horror in different directions. Tim's gang brought John to a vault with explosives, and such payment is quite valuable during the apocalypse. John glares at Tim's sixes and is not entirely sure that they are not lying. He stripped them naked, and they stood there and were embarrassed to show even a piece of their body. The team gathered in one place to bring one corpse as John needed it. Flies flew around the dead man like vile vultures eating the rotting flesh. It is unclear why John needed the zombie corpse, but he is serious about it. He pierces the stinking corpse with his sharp claw like the sharpest knife, piercing its flesh right through. Everyone is shocked by John's actions, and they all want to quickly find out what is going on in the head of a dead man and a man. John smears the six's face with zombie blood, and his intentions are clear. Since having become a zombie, he also lost the attention of the dead, and this will be like an experiment, whether zombies are guided by smell or otherwise. He knows about everything in this village. Even the gunpowder warehouse is no secret to him, and he instantly interrogates about it. Tim's gang is shocked. How does John know everything? How does he get so much information? John points out that he only saw this amount of pyrotechnics on the eve of the Chinese New Year, which means in such large quantities. John plays it safe and ties Tim up at the same time so that he doesn't have time to do anything bad despite all his madness. He thought through everything wisely and even realized that the blood of zombies would protect them all just a couple of meters from the dead man. Tim is tied up. Is this the end for him, or will he get out and continue to abuse everyone and use their lives to save his own? John explains Clint's role in the plan, and that he and everyone he leads should not care about their lives, because he and only he can tow the bus on which they will all escape. The beauty and the girl are worried that John will survive and return to them alive and well. He pays attention to them and understands that their hearts literally skip a beat when he repeatedly pretends to be a hero and tries to save everyone at the cost of his life. John strokes his little sister's little head and assures her not to worry, and he will never leave them again. He also asks his beloved to protect herself, and he will definitely come back and hug her tightly. She asks him not to overwork himself too much. In short, she takes care of him, encourages him in every possible way, and pleases him with her touches. She has only one demand for him, that he return unharmed and headlong run to them to express that he is alive and well. The girl parts the long hair from her lover's face in order to see his scar. Someone left a terrible scar on our hero's eye, and it's scary who could have left it. He kindly walks away from such touches, since this scar can cause not only physical pain, but also possibly moral pain. Probably the scar on his eye is his only weak point, and he can only hide his wounds to himself, although he has many other scars. They finally decide to go out before it's too late, so that there won't be too many dead at one point. John orders the six to take the explosives and carry them with him as if they were kamikazes. The door opens slightly. Our saviors, led by John, come out, and their plan is sure to be successful. There are indeed a lot of dead people, and their corpses are much more numerous, whether the graves spat out their inhabitants. They are not sure that the blood of the dead will save them, and still ask this question, since this operation could cost them their lives. Blood ceases to act within a radius of 2 meters, and this is its only weakness, which does not make it ideal in everything. They immediately went crazy after our hero's words and cannot imagine what would happen if they came closer than 2 meters. John is tired of being surrounded by only crybabies who constantly whine for their lives. His claw lit up with fire, as if a spark ran through his fingers like a stone hitting a flint. John does not want to die here. He first of all hopes for the success of the plan, and to survive in any case. Otherwise, he is not a man for not keeping his promise to his beloved girls. He uses his claw to light the fuse of all the explosives to finish off his fellow creatures. All the pyrotechnics soared into the air and headed towards the dead. Everyone is carrying dozens of sticks of dynamite, prepared for the hungry dead, and John bombards them with explosions so that they will definitely not get up after their death. For John, the main thing is that all the dead die in the shortest possible time, and nothing could interfere with his plan. Many explosions covered the ground and scattered the dead around. Among the ashes, sparks, and explosions, the Sixes and John rush forward to clear the way for those coming behind. While everyone is running, John's cold hand touches one of Tim's Sixes, and it is unclear why. He orders him to run ahead to the pyrotechnics warehouse and not look back. Against the background of explosions, a real fearless man runs and moves the entire team to clear the path forward. Explosions, blood, and zombies, all this scares the team. Everyone is trying to escape and save others. Six hates John for his dangerous plans and tries to express all their emotions by screaming and yelling. John calls him a zombie sadist, whether with some self-interest he laughs and jokes at him. Often the bodies of the dead fly in different directions. If they were people, there would be much more screams. Against the background of the dead and smoke, the door from the hiding place of our heroes opens slightly. Familiar white hair makes its way between the cracks, and its owner is apparently trying to find out whether the dead have left or not. Clint's team has scouted everything out, and they can all probably move out. They see a clear path to the bus and prepare to evacuate the village. Clint takes responsibility for John's sister. Michael takes responsibility for his beloved girl. The bus, even after such destruction, continues to operate, looking like a military vehicle that has gone through all the horrors of war. They got to the bus without any problems and are already going to take their seats. Clint instructs everyone to board the bus and not forget anyone. The others are worried about Clint, but he is responsible for everyone and must personally make sure everyone is in their seats. But this is not his only goal. He needed Tim, and he somehow set him up. He grabs Tim by the long hair to stop him, and Tim doesn't like it much. Clint talks about some things that were stolen by Tim. Tim was shocked by Clint's words, since he probably understands what Clint is talking about. At the same time, the rescue team made its way to the warehouse and are preparing for the second part of the plan. The Sixes open the door to the pyrotechnic warehouse to take all the explosives from there. They have come to a large amount of explosives and are waiting for orders from John. John is tormented by a scar on his eye, and this could plunge the entire team into mortal danger. Meanwhile, the dead are already on their heels and attack one of the six. The fat man knows a lot about explosives and grabs the biggest one to certainly solve the problem with the dead. The bearded monster sees a large stick of dynamite in front of his face, and that is the last thing he sees. The explosion was so strong that it tore out the doors and jambs and sent the dead man on a long flight. The dead pay attention to the explosion and even say something in their dead language. They understand that they have only made things worse, and the real danger has begun now. That zombie is still standing on its own 2 feet and is even holding up well. The dead attack the gap and don't even see the obstacles in front of them, just to eat human flesh and don't care about anything else, since they are led not by their minds, but by their legs, and wherever they lead, they will come. John manages to grab the zombie by the hair and saves his temporary ally from a zombie attack. He hits him on the ground and is amazed by the force with which he does this, with what ruthlessness. Over and over again, John beats and beats his enemy, leaving no chance for his victory. John sees a crowd of his relatives in front of him and is going to tear off the head of each of them and screw it back so that they never want to bite off a piece of a person again. He wants to send his enemy and is preparing to send him into the crowd of zombies. As they say, 3 birds with 1 stone, John is like a cannon, and his enemies are a cannonball that blows away everyone in its flight path. Everyone is perplexed by John's strength, their mouths open, waiting for orders. John tells them to take the gunpowder and he will solve the problem with all the zombies. Everyone agrees with him and is already in a hurry to collect gunpowder. After a powerful explosion and great carnage, a cloud of dust floats across the entire earth, covering the entire space. In the warehouse with pyrotechnics, oddly enough, there are a lot of explosives, and at times, it's even scary what Tim and his gang prepared so much of it for. Half-naked Sixes indicate that zombies are very difficult to fight, even too difficult. There are more and more walking corpses on the streets, as if they had fallen into an anthill, and the number of its inhabitants is amazing every time. John, as responsible for the success of the plan, takes on the task of protecting Tim's Sixes. Shave does not understand how he alone will fight hundreds of monsters that are much stronger than humans, but he still does not know what John is really capable of. The six hands over a large shipment of Chinese fireworks rockets to John, and that's how he plans to place each zombie's head on the floor. Shaved is worried about John and believes that it's not safe to go out into the street with all the zombies, and it's worth thinking through a good plan. John, calmly and quite confidently, is already moving towards the hole in the wall, holding a bunch of fireworks over his shoulder. John is completely confident in himself. Not a drop of worry is visible on his face, only complete confidence in success and a certain pathos. He opened his red eye, which frightens even those who have not experienced fear, whose heart does not freeze when there is a deep abyss under him, when the last breath of air runs out, and you are at the bottom, and there is only darkness around. The sixes are very frightened by his gaze, and not without reason, due to the fact that John is incredibly dangerous if you become his enemy. John believes that he doesn't see anything complicated in front of him, which means he shouldn't bother himself with such trifles. Under the cover of night, the dead become more and more numerous each time, which frightens each time. John's eye has unusual power. He is able to see opponents behind the walls of houses, and this gives him a great advantage over all opponents. He is already preparing to fire the first salvo, which will knock down every dead man in front of him and send them to burn in the suffering of Inferno. Fireworks display like volcanic eruptions, unleashing their terrible power, as in the times of Pompeii. The reaction force throws John some distance. That's the force of one volley of a bunch of fireworks. Each zombie is torn apart and sent on a long flight by the explosive force of the pyrotechnics, so that they become part of a magnificent fireworks display. Each salvo of a new missile sends zombies on a job interview to death, which will cut off the head of anyone who dares to come to her. Bright sparks, flesh, and zombie body parts, what could be better than this, when the enemies of humanity take their last flight and see their last fireworks? The sixes are amazed by John's strength, as if a current had been sent through their veins. But this is not enough for John. He needs to finish everything as soon as possible and go to his loved ones. A holiday during the apocalypse, two completely incompatible things, when the walking dead roam the alleys, and bright lights light up in the sky and give hope of survival to those who were able to escape under the yoke of hungry zombies. Passengers are inspired by the beauty of those lights, because 6 months have already passed since the end of the world, after the loss of all their dearest people. Sam saw someone and hesitantly says that John and the sixes are probably already returning. In fact, among the clouds of dust, one can see a silhouette similar to a human one, but it is not certain that it is an ally. The man contradicted Sam's expectations, and his face shows that those running in the smoke are not allies, but the worst enemies. They turned out to be evil dead people who were burning with fire and were running from something more dangerous than themselves. The nooses soared over the heads of the zombies, as if death itself was chasing them, as if it wanted to hang them on the gallows, where the same end awaits them for all: a rope, soap, a stool. Cannot posthumously embrace the dead and thereby took away their last hope for further absorption of people's lives. What could have frightened the already dead corpses so much and dragged them with such force into a cloud of dust, ash, and dirt? Still, the death of zombies cannot be avoided, and they cannot be saved even by a white chalk circle on the floor, since John himself is responsible for their death. He's already aiming a couple of missiles at the other ends of the ropes to decapitate a couple more of the dead. The emptiness in his eyes says that he is completely cold-blooded towards his enemies and will never think about mercy. A couple of seconds and the life of the dead will end at the wonderful moment of fireworks exploding. The explosion had already reached its enemies and burned their heads to the point of their skulls, so that even the rotten flesh peeled off the cranial cortex. The burning heads fell to the ground, and their appearance amazed all the passengers on the bus. John steps forward to meet his allies, representing the success of the mission. Everyone is assembled. The sixes keep up with John, who seems to have not been injured since only his partners look tired. Meg and Alice have already taken their places and are happily awaiting the arrival of John, so that he is alive, healthy, and unharmed. From the side, John hears a familiar voice that attracts his attention. He casts his sharp gaze upward, since it was from there that the sound that called him came. Clint and Tim climbed into one of the houses, because Clint needed to return important things that Tim had stolen from him and hid in this house. John probably doesn't understand what this couple has lost in this house and why they can't sit in their places. Clint makes a stupid face and asks John to catch him while he jumps. John's look suggests that he doesn't like this idea and is completely tired of looking after him like a small child. Multicolored explosions of fireworks enveloped the gray sky and painted it with the brightest colors, as if buckets of paint were splashed onto a snow-white canvas. No one ever hoped to see with their own eyes such beauty as the Chinese fireworks display. John still reaches out his hand to Clint and is already preparing to catch him in his tight embrace. Clint is already throwing himself from the window, screaming, expecting a soft landing in John's arms. You can tell from Sam's look that he noticed something wrong in Clint's jump, as if he had forgotten something very important. Clint is already climbing down the stone wall of the house and is preparing to touch the ground. John, like a real savior, catches a child from a burning house. Clint forgot about the most important thing, that he is attached to Tim, and this will not lead to anything good. The grimace that appeared on Clint's face shows the stupidity of his actions, that he did not fully think through his soft landing. Tim is already flying after Clint, screaming something incomprehensible in fear. Clint himself will soon pay for his absent-mindedness and lack of attentiveness, which is already in his blood. Tim and Clint had already collided with their heads, and they were obviously in trouble after such blows. John, for obvious reasons, did not dare to catch them both and left all responsibility to fate, to Fathom. Two fools are lying one under the other, and it is literally written on their faces that they are not happy about such a fall. But Clint, the team boss, is to blame for everything. Clint is trembling and doesn't understand why John didn't catch him, what the reason is. John said contemptuously that he had changed his mind about catching him and Tim, but next time he would be smarter. The entire team expressed contempt for them and put their hands to their faces, which means complete shame for their bosses who act like children. Meg is already running to John to hug him tightly and probably express all her emotions about the magnificent fireworks display. She jumps into John's arms, and if she had been Tim instead of falling, John would have just as happily caught her and tossed her up a couple of times, making sure to catch her so that she could see much more from such a height than usual. This is true joy in the eyes of a child, in the eyes of a little girl who immensely loves and appreciates her brother, whom she has not seen for a very long time. John invites Alice and Meg to escape from here to the most remote places in this world, and his interlocutors listen to him carefully, expressing their agreement. Clint does not like their attitude in the family, since he hates his family with all his heart, for an unknown reason. He is dissatisfied that John did not catch him, and considers himself a dog that John allowed into his family for a while. A drop of water fell onto Clint's shoulder, and he instantly turned his attention to it. Heavy rain poured down, and it would extinguish all the fire that was created by the explosions of hundreds of fireworks. Cold drops flowed from Clint's face and covered his hair with a light color, as if after the morning fog, when on each blade of grass there are many drops of water of the fallen humidity of the fog. The sky brought down one of its natural phenomena, raining down a large amount of water on the earth, which will wash away all the dirt from the face of the earth. The lights went out, the flames were uprooted and extinguished by tiny droplets of rain. The burned corpses went out and their eyes, like lunar craters, filled with emptiness and darkness. A certain smell spread and caressed the noses of the rescued. The pleasant smell lured with its charm and directed their gaze towards the sources of that smell and all the victims of this smell, which captivated with its charm. Leo was frightened by something. He swallowed the saliva in his mouth because of the strange charm that appeared suddenly, foreshadowing something bad. John noticed Leo's strange behavior and, grabbing his shoulder, asked why he wasn't heading to the bus to take his seat. The scientist was distracted by a loud scream, which greatly alarmed him since the cause of the screams was severe hunger, which was awakened by that very smell. Six is trying to keep their ally from starting to eat the zombie meat, from which a strong, alluring smell was just coming. Leo's calmness disappeared at that very second, as he realizes that consuming a zombie will lead to transformation into a zombie himself. Clint's father, the people from Tim's gang, and those who ate the meat of the dead went crazy, and their faces became similar to the faces of drug addicts after another marathon of taking drugs. Leo suggested that the reason for people's madness was the smell of fried zombies, which lured their minds like drug addicts are lured by one kind of the next drug. John did not even think about the fact that they could become dead, since they had already eaten dead meat. John was shocked by Leo's words, and he said that it is not necessary for a zombie to bite him for infection. The madmen rushed towards the stinking meat of the dead. Their faces went crazy, covered with a terrifying grimace, as if they had already become bloodthirsty zombies. Leo already had experience with such patients. He adjusted his glasses and began to tell his long story. The behavior of the virus is very peculiar. People lost their minds without even eating the flesh of the dead. At the beginning of the end of the world, hospitals already looked quite terrible, as if they had been in constant ruin for decades and had been completely abandoned for a long time. The doors of the hospital locker rooms were shabby and scuffed from all parts. At the beginning of Armageddon, Leo found himself in the locker room of his hospital with his colleagues and some patients. Since everything happened so suddenly, they only had time to eat small snacks, and it is so bad that they will have to eat them for a long time. During the 2 weeks, Leo had one chocolate bar left, which was like the most delicious morsel during a long-term fast. He's already bringing a sweet bar in a beautiful wrapper, thinking about what he can afford today. Leo didn't even have time to touch his candy bar with his lips when someone unfamiliar and probably very arrogant snatches it away. His look instantly changed to a more fearful one, since perhaps that candy bar was his last food for the near future. The thief turned out to be a certain scoundrel who had become very skinny all the time and threatened Leo with a broken bottle of wine, since he certainly would not have had the strength to take his food from an adult man. The man turned out to be not such a scoundrel, since he did not eat the bar himself, but shared it with his wife, like a real man. Like the most loving wife, she refuses to eat and invites him to eat since he has become very skinny. He makes excuses for her and says that his hunger cannot be satisfied with such a trifle. He only needs raw meat and let her eat a sweet bar. He did all this for his future son, so that he would grow up healthy and his mother would remain as beautiful. She nevertheless agreed and thanked him for such generosity, and he answered her with a sweet and kind smile. Leo noticed that the man was very exhausted, and everything he said was a lie, since he was very weak. The man's face was empty, no emotions. He was greeted by death, but the sweet smile did not leave him. He was completely weakened, exhausted. His strength and soul left him. He is at his limit. His pupils have disappeared from his eye sockets. His lips have become very dry, and he himself has become very withered, all signs of death from exhaustion. The dear wife cannot let go of her beloved husband. Her fidelity is amazing. She is afraid of losing him just as she is afraid of her own death. The beautiful wife tightly clung to the still warm body of her husband, a man with a capital M, who for the sake of his family was ready to sacrifice himself until he lost his mind. Leo understands that he is probably already dead, and all he has left is to leave this world with the death of a brave man who defended his lady of his heart until his death. The girl asks all the doctors sitting here for help, accusing them of being doctors and why can't they help him. One of the doctors justifies himself by saying that the man can no longer be saved and that it is definitely impossible to help him. For him, this is the end, but for that it is very bright. She hated all the doctors the second they refused help, since, in her opinion, they should have at least taken the initiative. She hugs her husband for the last time and sees him off to another world so that he can live there happy and healthy. Still, he answered her, calling her darling and grabbing her soft, shiny locks of dark hair. The look remained as empty as before, but he sensed a strange and at the same time fragrant smell from the side. Probably the man had a dying delirium, and soon he would lose consciousness and die the death of the mighty. Leo found the man's behavior strange as he smelled the stew that he thought his wife had stewed for him. His wife doesn't understand him. There isn't even a morsel of food nearby, and his nonsense seems very out of character. He pressed his crazy face to the floor, along which a pleasant aroma was spreading, and like a dog he began to sniff and go to the source of the smell. The smell came from outside the locker room, and the man understood this, which led to very bad consequences. The drool was released like a river and flowed, like a bear at the sight of honey, like a pervert at the sight of a beauty, like a fisherman at the smell of delicious fried fish. Everyone in the room is shocked. The wife tries to stop her husband and asks others to stop him. Suddenly, the man's strength awoke, and he rushed to meet the smell, eagerly to absorb that source of the smell. A strange aroma filled the entire locker room and spread its aroma everywhere. The wife has already lost hope in her husband's rationality, and the others cannot understand what happened to the man and where he got so much strength from when he was so weak. Her face is full of despair and misunderstanding, as if she had some kind of hope and at the same moment lost it. She truly loves her husband with all her heart, is devoted to him with all her soul, and is even ready to step over fear and head towards danger. The doctors are worried about her and are trying to stop her, but she doesn't even listen to their words. She hopes that her husband will return to her safe and sound. One of the doctors suggests going there and scouting out the situation, since she is pregnant and it's worth keeping an eye on her. The feet of people began to take the first steps in order to leave these four walls for a long time and not huddle within these four walls and fight for the last piece of food. Something caused a strange reaction in Leo and even slightly scared his fearless Dr. Hart. He opened his mouth wide and was very, very surprised by what he saw. The thin legs of the loving wife began to give way. She felt bad as she spoke with great heaviness, but it is unknown what could have frightened her so much. All the food she had eaten during all this time came out, and it was all just from what she saw. Now it is clear what frightened the girl so much. The man was eating the flesh of a dead man, which had long since rotted, and her already darkened blood was smeared on the walls of the hospital. He greedily eats piece after piece as if he had already become a real dead man. He was truly mad. Character, personality, appearance, everything changed in a matter of seconds. The real danger lay in wait among the survivors and was waiting for the right moment to metastasize. She should not experience strong worries, but she cannot do anything about it, since quite recently an absolutely reasonable husband turned into a terrible monster. He attacked her, not seeing his wife in front of him, but a victim, meat, food that once belonged to her husband, and now she will be food for the monster in the body of the father of her child. Leo will never forget this again. It left a big mark on the life of the blue-haired doctor. Leo is very angry with that man since he ate his own wife, who was pregnant and carrying his child, but still he cannot be blamed, since his strength left him and the virus took over him, taking over his mind. Sam and Michael try to stop the guys from eating this smelly food since they already look terrible. John understands the danger of this situation and the fact that, having eaten zombie meat, they will sooner or later become dead, and this cannot be avoided. John remembers his parents, and this causes him great pain, expanding his emptiness in his soul. As Clint's father eats piece by piece of rotted zombie flesh, his skin begins to darken, and his mind becomes dull. Drops of rain are dripping on him, but he doesn't care about everything around him. He's as if under the influence of psychotropic substances. He wants to get more and more high. Clint's mother tries to stop him from being devoured by zombies so that one of the pieces does not end up being his last. Clint doesn't let his mother near his father so that he doesn't hurt her and make things worse. She asks her son to save his father no matter how much pain he brings to Clint, because he is above all this. She despaired, because it is clear that Clint will never help this bastard, since it is their fault that they raised him in such a way that he behaves like a child. All roots come from his parents and their upbringing. Clint looks down at his mother, showing his determination and the fact that he will definitely never help his father in anything. She looks with her puppy eyes and seems to be begging him for help with them, the fact that she is also to blame for all the incidents, but asks once again for help. The mother grabs his hand and continues to beg for help. She is ready to kneel before her son, and he only needs the death of his father so that he will rot under a layer of earth. Clint asks in return for saving him to do him a favor, to tell him the truth in his matter. Clint remembered a certain night 15 years ago that shocked our mother, as her pupils constricted greatly from what she heard. Clint asks if she begged this bastard to save him, if she asked for mercy towards Clint, so that at least once they would feel sorry for him. Clint is very puzzled, and he is fully expecting an answer. He is waiting for the truth from his mother. Without unclenching her hands, his mother continued to listen to the difficult question that her son asked her. He abruptly pulled his hand out of her palms, personifying his indifference towards her and continuing to trample her into the ground. She did not expect such harshness from her son and such rejection, her heart pierced through the thickest spear. The mother pronounced his name with heaviness and sobbed heavily, since the question was truly difficult. and it was incredibly difficult for Clint himself, who endured all this, to bear this burden. She screamed with tears in her eyes that it was completely impossible to take and stand up for her little son, to take and save him, but not to regret it in the future. Clint's face wilted, but he's glad he heard the truth, and his mother continues to make excuses in terms of the fact that she could have saved, but would have been dead by that moment. Clint expected this from his parents, who, except for harm, did not extol anything into his life. No one will ever be able to save Clint's family. A ray of sun will never break through to them, their family, the dark side of the moon, all the worst that could happen in Clint's life. That's why the apocalypse is like a holiday for him. He throws his mother towards Michael and orders him to keep his eyes on her. Clint grabs a steel stake and prepares it for his vile father to finally solve the whole problem with him. The rest ask their friends and acquaintances to stop eating dead meat, but these madmen no longer see or hear anyone in front of them. Clint sticks a steel bayonet into the would-be dead man and ends his life. The madman's friend can't believe that Clint killed his ally so mercilessly and didn't show even an ounce of mercy. The corpse, bleeding, lost the last crumbs of its consciousness and its soul went to the next world. He tells the six that there is no need to waste time on him and let him be killed, which will kill him too. He remained silent and continued to drill Clint's back with his gaze. Clint is already approaching his bastard father and preparing his bayonet for an instant attack and the same instant kill. The father continues to consume the flesh of the zombies and receives ecstasy from the taste of dead meat, which has consumed his mind and made him a zombie. Clint looks with hatred at his next victim, who is bound to die sooner or later by his hand. Clint states that he hasn't seen such a familiar expression on his father's face for a long time. Blood and raindrops are dripping from his face. His skin has darkened, and he is not going to finish his meal, but is even thinking about continuing, although his mind has long left him. Clint is already swinging his bayonet and directing his attack towards the bastard. His face looks like he's on a real high, as if his brain has turned to crumb, like cockroaches from Declorvos. Here is the face of a shameless man, humble and completely high. He absolutely does not care that his son is pointing a weapon at him. He does not care that there is a heavy downpour. He gets a big buzz. It struck Clint, this expression on his face is worse than any horror. How you can bring yourself to such a state. Food began to burst out. That grin killed all the desire to kill him. He wants to grind him into dust. His father's face infuriated Clint. He wanted his soul to finally leave this dirty shell so that his father would commit suicide. Clint began to cry as this grimace reminded him of one of the events of his childhood. As a child, Clint also cried constantly, for which his parents were guilty of bringing everything to the point of absurdity. We were brought back into Clint's story 15 years ago, to the very night that Clint himself spoke of when he asked his mother a question. Here he is, a real horror for the child in which Clint constantly lived. They whipped him, hung him on a rope, and dressed him in women's dresses. All this was done by some important person with her fetishes, who cannot restrain her sadistic inclinations, and his father rubs his hands, waiting for something. Here is the impudent grimace of the father and his, apparently, client, who greedily licks his lips and praises this bastard for his son. Realizing that his boss got what he wanted, the father asks for something that this sadist promised him. The bastard asks his guards to bring Clint's father a certain suitcase with unknown contents. The father's face changed when bags of medicine began to fall from the suitcase, which gave him great peace and tranquility. The person is already impatient to start dessert. He wants to quickly and better get a better look at his victim of sadism. The father snorts the next dose of the drug, and the mother stands all tense and looks at all this, because she is afraid to move, to make an unnecessary movement. The sadist continues to praise his victim for his snow-white skin and scarlet blood, since these sights awaken in him the dirtiest animal instincts. Clint managed to bite the finger of the arrogant sadist, which is what he needed, since this freak has no right to touch the innocent body of a child. The pervert did not like this insolence and responded with a blow to his face, calling Clint a bitch. But he was aroused by such insolence. No one treated him like that, and he decides to act harshly in the immobilized child. The bastard decided to do the unacceptable and put his hand under the skirt of a child who didn't even have time to do anything bad. He tries to get the bastard to stop, but his excitement cannot be stopped. This is where all the traumas come from. They all come from childhood. They all appear due to the fault of adults and their upbringing. but still difficult times give rise to strong people. The impudent face of a real freak, to whom only children are given. Only children bring real pleasure to the freak. Clint's face speaks of all the worst emotions and feelings that he has experienced in his entire life with a terrible father, a real bastard. Something surprised our pervert. Something stopped his joy, lust, and greed. Something ended all his pleasure. It wasn't even surprise that came to the pervert's head, but anger, rage, which he wanted to pour out somewhere. He began to bare his teeth and rub them against each other. He did not expect that a man's body was hiding behind the women's clothes, that behind the snow-white skin and scarlet blood there was a boy, and this plunged him into anger. The mother is crying, the father is enjoying another dose, and the boss is angry. All the sins gathered in one room, lust, greed, despondency, anger, and so on, they all represent Clint's family. That's what he meant when he said that his family, no one can ever be saved. The boss slams his father's face into one of the bags of drugs, and he gets an even bigger buzz than before. He grabs him by the hair to interrogate him about why he was given a boy who does not give him the pleasure he deserves. The eyes became squinted, the mind became clouded, and rational logic completely disappeared, leaving only the instincts of the animal. The pervert throws Clint's father, and his mother tries to catch the culprit of all the misfortunes in their family. The boss breathes a sigh of relief, but his rage has not left him, and he is ready to destroy everyone in their family. He understands that Dad got a big buzz because he sniffed out all the drugs that he brought him. The mother asks for forgiveness from the important person, since otherwise they will only face death at his hands, which will not cost him anything. He casts an angry glance at her, and apparently he takes out his anger on her. She will be his next victim. The boss grabs a sharp knife and prepares it for our mother, who cannot even protect her son. She stands further, bending her knees, and apologizes, and he is already approaching her, and with every step he is getting closer and closer to put his blade to her neck. He puts a knife to her neck and says that she will never understand how he feels, what humiliation he received that night. The person's face darkened. He showed his true personality, a terrifying tyrant, a pervert, and all this is hidden behind a rich man who may be considered a good gentleman. Someone snatches a knife from the hands of a sadist, and he did not like such impudence. The slobbery bastard pulls out a knife, and it's no better, since the knife he has is even worse than the pervert's, since he's going to solve Clint's gender problem. Even the pervert was intrigued by a certain method of the scoundrel's father, since it was not without reason that he snatched the knife from his hands, certainly not in order to protect his wife. He already points a knife at Clint and says that after his birth, our dad began a series of failures, and all the consequences were brought by the birth of Clint. He has lost his last strength to even speak, and can only silently look at his distraught father, who is already bringing the knife closer and closer to him. The father could have become a successful man if Clint and his mother had not appeared in his life. The tears don't have time to fall from Clint's face, and his father says that it would be better if he were a girl, and there wouldn't be any unnecessary problems. He lifts his skirt and brings a knife, saying that with one movement of the knife, this problem can be solved. Clint begs to save him, begs his mother, calls her, and it's as if he's standing in front of him and is holding on with difficulty not to snatch her husband's hands. Mother cries and tries to stop her husband, but she does not have the strength to do this, since she understands the consequences of her actions. He noticed that the mother decided to say something against the actions of the father, and he did not like it, since he liked this child. But his only problem is that he is a boy. Mother froze and could not say anything in response to such contempt, only remained silent and silent. The boss liked his father's decision, and the blood began to boil again, as if it had been boiled and was evaporating from the temperature. Father is already licking his lips and preparing his knife to cut off what, in his opinion, is superfluous to Clint, what must be deprived of our Clint, his dignity. He began to scream even louder. With every second, the pity for him manifested itself more and more, since such an attitude should not be towards a child. Clint has already come out of his memories and shouts to his father that he will never forgive him in his life. The bastard has already transformed and is already rushing towards Clint to kill him too. Clint understands that he has been sleeping for too long, and it is unlikely that anyone will help him. Someone will save him. Someone snatched Clint's bayonet, and it is unclear whether he is an enemy or an ally who has come to save him. The unknown person grabs Clint by the belt and tries to save him, which suggests that this is our savior. The stake is sent towards Papani to hit him and put an end to him once and for all. Incredibly, our savior turned out to be John, who, when necessary, will always come to the aid of his family and friends. The steel tip pierces the dead man's father and sends him on a long flight to heaven, where he will be sent to the very bottom of hell, burning with the flames of inferno. Everyone silently looks at the corpse of a dead man, who a minute ago was a man who could show signs of an intelligent person. John, silently looking at his father, puts Clint on his shoulder and carries him to the bus, since they have already lost too many and they don't dare lose the commander. Everyone is trying to wake up Clint, and John orders them to hurry up and get on the bus and finally take their seats. Clint gets wet in the rain and realizes that it's all over with this bastard. He will no longer be in his life. He wipes away all the tears that have accumulated in him over a long time, and the moisture on his cheeks is hidden by the downpour, which has been pouring in every moment for a long time. Morning came. Birds flew out of the green crowns of the trees, as if the nightmare that had passed at night had evaporated the very second the sun appeared over the horizon. The steel chains that John used to pull the bus on his hump fell down, indicating that they had arrived somewhere. John dragged the bus all night to its destination and still arrived only in the morning and was probably very tired. One of the passengers noticed a very important thing. John led everyone to a cave, which for the first time would protect them from the next influx of zombies. The sixes accompany Tim to the cave in order to explore the territory and shed light on the darkness in the gloomy cave. John takes responsibility for ensuring that everyone leaves the bus and goes to the cave. They found a place to stay for the night, but Tim seemed to still be without a roof over his head. He didn't even have a face. He was completely drooping, because he had to obey John, the one whom he had despised and humiliated all his life. John is a real gentleman, as he is ready to carry his lady of his heart in his arms so that she does not have any problems with this. John and Alice agree to go inside and make themselves more comfortable, but Meg seems to be worried about something, as if that darkness does not give her peace, and she does not take her eyes off the cave. John was alarmed that Clint did not enter the cave with everyone, but rushed in a completely different direction. The darkness of the cave swallowed up all the light. Every ray of sun disappears without a trace in the darkness. But still, the inside of the cave is quite cozy.